In an old Spanish mission 182 years ago, history was made in a way that left us all remembering it. It was here at the Bow of the Alamo in 1836 that American heroes were born in this segment of the Texas Revolution. While the rebels were outmanned, outgunned, and eventually defeated, their courage of staying for a final stand would go on to inspire the entirety of the revolution for the rest of the war. For it is noble and brave for one to stay steadfast in the face of imminent defeat, which these heroic men did, and serve as role models to us today to teach us how to face our own struggles. From the time before fighting broke out to the very last bullets fired, the events that occurred at the Bow of the Alamo have cemented the small church into American history. The Alamo itself was a small Spanish mission in San Antonio that was hundreds of years old. The Mexicans, at the beginning of the Revolution, turned it into a makeshift fort, which, when the Texans did arrive into San Antonio, they abandoned and retreated. And when the Texans stationed their men into the Alamo for the defense of San Antonio, they found the defenses to be relatively untouched or damaged. About 100 Texans were stationed at the Alamo, and according to Jeremy Suri, Chair of Leadership in Global Affairs at the University of Texas in Austin, in a 2016 article, Relevance of the Battle of the Alamo is Still Present Today, is observed that a significant number of these fighters were Tejano volunteers, or Texans of Mexican descent. In the defenses of the Alamo, the Mexicans did leave behind numerous amount of artillery cannons, which would be very crucial in the defense of the Alamo, because the defenses set in place, such as the walls, were quite poor and not suited for a full-scale siege. The Mexican army, however, did not forget the Alamo. Mexican President Santa Anna had started to gather a large army to retake the area. According to Philip Tucker, PhD and historical writer, in the 2010 book Exodus from the Alamo, The Anatomy of the Last Stand Myth, as, quote, Santa Anna performed brilliantly in catching his opponents by surprise, swiftly eliminating them like he did at the Alamo, and winning repeated victories during the late winter of the 1836 campaign, end quote. Santa Anna and the Mexican army wanted to retake Bexar, which was the Mexican region that San Antonio was located. He sent out his men for a march that took many weeks and was during harsh weather, which increased the length of the march. But they did finally arrive in San Antonio on the 23rd of February. The siege itself began on February 23rd when the Mexican troops marched into San Antonio. The residents of the town started to flee, and after they fled, the army surrounded the Alamo itself and the perimeter of it with about 1,500 men. They signaled to the defenders that there would be no prisoners accepted, and after failed negotiations for an honorable surrender and discovering that the only option was unconditional surrender, the Texans decided that they would fight to the very last man. From February 24th to March 3rd, many skirmishes, but no major conflict happened between the two forces. And Mexican reinforcements did arrive, increasing their numbers to over 3,000 men to the Texans' 100. According to James Donovan, best-selling historical writer, in his 2012 book, The Blood of Heroes, The 13-Day Struggle for the Alamo and the Sacrifice That Forged a Nation, he says that Anna's men spent most of this time setting up battery placements to prepare for a future siege. This future siege was planned for March 6th in the morning, and the morning of March 6th, the Mexicans formed tight columns and they charged the walls at the unsuspecting Texans. The Texans initially had the advantage as they were in tight columns and they were easy targets to shoot. But once they reached the walls, the Texans lost the advantage significantly and the Mexicans started to scale the walls. While some did scale the walls and succeed, the attack itself failed and they regrouped. The Mexicans then struck for a second attack, which also had the same fate and failed. The third attempt, however, they focused on the northern wall, and the northern wall did fall, and preceding that, all the defending walls fell as well. After fighting inside the Alamo, all the remaining forces either gathered in front of the church or in the barracks. They started to use their rifles as clubs because they had lost the time to use their weapons for shooting and reloading. After an hour, the barracks fell, and the only remaining stand was the people in front of the church. They retreated inside the church, and there were about 12 to 20 of them left. And they started to pick up the rifles of the dead and shoot them, for they didn't have time to reload their own weapons. The last of the men retreated to the sanctuary, which is where they died, and the Battle of the Alamo ended at the last death of the last defender, and the battle itself lasted a little over an hour. The Battle of the Alamo has been cemented into American history by the events and heroic actions that occurred there. While many of these men may not have won the battle that day, at least they and their sacrifice will never be forgotten as people continue today to remember the Alamo. Thank you.
Good job.